love
Oh
it.
my gosh, I love it. I love our dancing today. I have so much to talk to you about and tell you about. Do you remember our guest Boosie Peters who was on, who is doing the Bay Healing art project? You remember from Houston,
So
Texas?
I remember her name.
So this project is ongoing
Mhm.
until April, right?
Okay.
So we meet once a month as artists, activists, women coming together to heal ourselves and the stuff around racial equity,
Right.
so we can come together and support each other, right?
Yeah.
So this happens at 8 o'clock on Sunday nights, which you know me, my friend,
It's
like
late for you.
that's
It's late.
late. It's
Yeah.
late. He's in another time zone, right? So this is
Mhm.
8 p.m. my time. Well, I was at a conference all weekend, and so I was online way too much. And
Mhm.
then I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Boosie's thing tonight. I gotta go." Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's gonna be this laid back thing, a group, a women's circle. I get on there, and
Mhm.
I don't have the sister's name in front of me, and I need to get it because I want her to come and be
Mhm.
on our show.
Okay.
2 hours of Haitian dance.
Okay.
Like, but I can tell you, yeah, okay, but when I was doing this today, my shoulders
Yeah.
are still like, girl, that is from Sunday. That is from Sunday. Like, what happened here? Because my shoulders, I don't know, have ever moved the way we moved on Sunday. So it was
Haitian dance.
good
I'm
and it was
interested.
fun. But whew, me on a Sunday night, just picture it trying to do
Yeah.
Haitian dance.
Yeah.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy to be here talking about our topic today.
I
I'm
can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, it's our 53rd episode. So I know we celebrated a year, but we are officially over the mark of an episode for a week for a year. So yeah, I'm excited.
Right. Well, I'm doubly excited for our guest today, who has been, well, we'll tell you the history when we pull her up here. But should we do our official intro and kick off the show?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah,
let's
let's
do it.
start it. Let's start
Let's
it.
do it.
Hey guys, I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial business owner, the founder of Shalo Glow, a handmade shea butter company. I am your champion for natural self-care and practical business systems.
Hey, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, and published author, and a dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself in community care.
Yes, and together we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the 8 dimensions of wellness.
And we like to get together every week and have intentional conversations about how to be wise in business and relationships and wellness. Like, how do we do all this? We do it with today's guest, is one
Right.
of the ways we do it. So, what
Yeah.
are we talking about today, Shannon? Set us up for our topic.
Love it. Today we are talking about emotional and mental wellness. And according to the University of California, it is important to be attentive to both positive and negative feelings and be able to understand how to handle these emotions. Emotional wellness also includes the ability to learn and grow from experience. Emotional well being encourages autonomy and proper decision making skills.
Mm,
Mhm.
something we have to have woven throughout our whole life.
Absolutely. Whether it's at work, right? And our occupational wellness, how we talk about with friends and relationships for ourselves and how we choose to do things and how it affects us. So, yeah, it's all woven in together.
I love it.
Mhm.
I know we usually have a little more intro convo, but I want to bring our guest up quicker
Let's
than
move
later
on.
because she has been a part of our lives for several years. We've been trying to get her on the show for a minute. So I'm going to read the
Four
bio,
years now. It's been 4 years now.
right?
That's
Absolutely.
crazy.
So I'm going to read her bio and we're going to pull her up on stage and just have her be a part of as much of the show as we can. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, our next guest is a coach with a Colgate smile and a passion for women. Yep, we can say that's true. As a relationship coach and empowerment speaker for girls, teens, and preteens, and women, Chanda understands the importance of cultivating healthy, loving relationships and the power of positive influence and how it impacts our ability to communicate effectively, love ourselves correctly, and develop meaningful relationships with others. She has been a resident of Gwinnett County her entire life, most of which she has lived in the small but growing city of Duluth. She's one of my neighbors, y'all. Outside of being a mom, speaker, and entrepreneur, Chanda has also had a passion for serving others and uses her gifts and voice to empower and inspire girls and women in the community. As the founder and owner of Boundless Queens Ministries and Chanda C Speaks, her mission and passion is to help women to discover the power in their purpose and to recognize that they are deserving of relationships that are life-giving and not life-taking. Oh my gosh. I love that we know such amazing women.
Yes.
Get on up here on this stage.
Hey, ladies. Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course.
We are so glad to have this conversation with you today. But pre-show, Shannon, talk about what we were talking about. About Mondays and Starbucks.
Yes. So we said that we've known her for a while, right? It's been 4 years now. We all started at Manifestation Mondays, a group where we support each other personally and professionally, talking about our goals and our wins, which was huge and has been huge through COVID. And it's been so long since I've seen you. I know we've been venturing off and you've been working with the ladies, having speaking engagements. So I'm so excited to hear what you're working on right now and to talk to the ladies so we can have some resources and tools in our belt to have healthy, balanced relationships.
Absolutely. And again, you guys, thank you so much for having me on here. I have missed you guys so much. And, just looking back from when we first met and started, Manifestation Mondays, everybody has grown so much. And everybody has, had goals that they had, set out to do. And, we're literally like walking in that very thing that we all have talked about. Like we've literally manifested those things. And so I'm just so proud of y'all. And like I said, I'm so excited to be here. I really am. And, again, as it relates to, being in relationships, I think it is so important that we as women understand that we are deserving of healthy relationships. It's so important. Relationships are a huge part of our lives, and friendships are also, a huge part of our lives as well. And right now, I recently finished my certification as a official relationship coach. So, my next step is to start taking clients, essentially to get them to better understand themselves as it relates to, relationships, whether if they're, single, because you know how it can be sometimes when you're in a single season of being single, of singleness, and someone who may have just recently gone through a breakup, emotionally, that can put you in a space as well. But just getting back to normalizing and cultivating healthy relationships.
I also think about my friends who are ready to start dating again, but they have some past baggage, or they have relationships that have gone off the rails before and they're nervous, or they're not sure. I think about how we've heard for years, like if a relationship doesn't work, if you don't work on yourself, you're going to create the same environment or the same relationship that you were in before. So I'd love to hear you speak to our listeners on that. Like, how do you break patterns that are unhealthy? And not to blame or shame where they came from, but like, how do you break them? How do you change if you're not happy with the relationship you've had or currently have? How do you get out? What do you do?
Well, I mean, every relationship and every circumstance is different. So, just speaking from my personal experience, again, just a little bit of background, I went through dating violence as a teen and as a young adult. And it really makes my situation or story a little bit unique because growing up, I had parents to have those conversations with me about what relationships should look like and what's acceptable behavior and what's not. But I still fell victim, so to speak, to abusive relationships. And in knowing myself at that time, there was so much that I did not know. It was a lot that I didn't know. And just thinking that you can fix someone who has things that are deeper rooted, just understanding that there's layers to those things. There's layers as it relates to someone who may not know how to, I guess, conduct themselves in a relationship. They don't know how to be in a relationship because they were never given those examples. But to answer your question, for me, in order for me to break that cycle, I had to first acknowledge the fact that I was in an abusive relationship. I went through these emotions of feeling embarrassed. I went through these, emotions of feeling like I had failed and kind of blaming myself. Because again, I didn't want people to know that, oh God, another relationship has failed. Like, here we go again. But it's just being able, first and foremost, to acknowledge that the abuse exists. And once you acknowledge that, even though that might be a hard step for you to take, that's the best step that you can take, because now it gives you that opportunity to move forward and to get yourself out of a space that's unhealthy. And once you've acknowledged that abuse, it also allows you to start working on yourself. It allows you to start saying, okay, not necessarily blaming yourself, but it just allows you to focus on, okay, why did I allow myself to stay in something that I knew that was unhealthy? What is it internally about me that made me think that this was okay? So you go through those motions, of asking yourselves those questions. And once you've acknowledged that the abuse exists, then it's like you have to change those negative thought patterns. You have to change those patterns as it relates to, okay, how can I say this? Like holding yourself accountable as it relates to, okay, am I picking the wrong people? Am I ignoring the red flags? For the sake of trying to see the good in this person and ignoring, what else is going on in the background. So you have to change those thought patterns. And I'm sorry.
Oh, I just want to, before we get into changing those thought patterns, I want to identify for our listeners something you said about like recognizing that you're a victim of domestic violence or that you are in an abusive relationship, because I don't think that's always easy.
Right.
Like, I was on LinkedIn this week and I saw a beautiful post, which I'll tag you in. It was from a gentleman who, his name is DM Mooney, and he has his PhD in psychology. And it says, what does a victim of domestic violence look like? I mean, this is this good looking man, buff, strong. And he said, me. And he said, many have noticed that several of my recent posts were deleted. And I mentioned that I was hacked, but realized after self-reflecting that this is an opportunity to increase visibility on issues of domestic violence. He said, in my previous marriage, I was physically, emotionally, and financially abused. She had borderline personality disorder, but refused to maintain treatment. This resulted in years of domestic abuse, including stealing my identity to take out loans, emptying my bank accounts, having countless affairs, putting me down constantly, and abandoning us randomly, leaving me to deal with the bills and our son alone. She'd leave for weeks, months, even a year, and then just to decide to come back without my consent. So it got really powerful when I read it, because I was like, it can happen to anybody.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. And what's so powerful to me about your work is like, it doesn't matter about age. Like this can start as soon as kids start dating, but it can be all age, all race, all nationalities, all like, this is an epidemic.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
Lift that up so you could speak to it in other ways for our listeners to recognize it. Because like stealing identity, like people might not think, oh, that's abuse. That's abuse.
Absolutely.
Or keeping you on such a tight budget, or not, like that you can be financially abused to where you can't leave the relationship.
Right.
I'd love your take on this, but to me, I kind of like when your choices are taken away.
Right.
You need to be paying attention.
Absolutely. And again, so like you said, it doesn't discriminate against anybody. And I say that because as a young adult, the guy that I was dating at the time, he was very charming. He was very charismatic. I mean, he was very like gave me compliments all the time. He he was a great cook. Granted, we worked together, so he would cook me things for work. He would walk me out to my car, at the end of my shift. And I'm saying all of these things because at the time, I didn't see that as him grooming me, so to speak. And not to say that there are men out there who do these things and it's wrong, but it's more so about the intention behind it. If it's a good intention, it's not going to be anything negative attached to it. It's not going to be anything self-serving attached to it. So I just want to clarify that there are some great men out there, but again, it's a difference between being groomed and a difference between it being something genuine. And if you're not brought up in an environment where you've witnessed abuse, you're not going to recognize it. If you haven't grown up in an environment where somebody is an addict, you're not going to recognize it immediately. You're going to think like, oh, I can fix this person. Like, what's going on? Because of the background I came from, I tried to share certain things with him that I learned that were loving and that were caring to possibly change his perspective on how he went about, I guess, conducting himself in a relationship. And again, that's why I say it's layers to all of these things, because, later on, I found out things about him that I, never knew, were going on. And while him and I were together, it's funny you talk about financial abuse because that happened to me. And I didn't realize it at first what was going on because, again, him and I were working together and I wanted to finish school. So he was like, hey, if you want to finish school, you stay at home. I'll pay the bills. Don't worry about anything. And at the time, it sounded like a great idea. But as time went on, he would do things as it relates to, money. He would withhold money from me because he knew there were things that I needed, to do for myself. And let me remind you, he was 9 years older than I was at the time. So, I mean, he would withhold money from me, and the little money that I did have, he would try to control that and tell me, what to spend it on. And he would leave me in a space where I couldn't do anything for myself. And he would tease me about that, even if it was something as small as, gas money. Hey, I need $20 for gas money. And he would, kind of sit back and laugh at me. But in my mind, I'm like, this is what you offered to me. But now he used it to his advantage to manipulate the situation. And it goes back to, having that control, because essentially that's what it was. So again, you won't recognize it. It will be seen or disguised as a kind gesture when really it's just them, reeling you in and, just putting you in a space to where you solely have to depend on them for like everyday necessity. So I went through that, unfortunately.
And it's so interesting, what I think about when you talk about the thought process and breaking down the negative thoughts is people's belief that they deserve that. I had to realize in certain situations, there's self-respect. There's also self-disrespect. I was disrespecting myself by not holding these boundaries, and letting certain things happen. So just like you said, I had never thought about, maybe not the way that you put it, grooming, right? In a relationship, them treating you a certain type of way so you get used to it and then flip it on you. But instead it's having set boundaries for yourself or just standards, and knowing what you want in a relationship, knowing that you're worth, asking for those things and expecting that to be a minimum, is what helped me. It's not just somebody being nice to you. There's nice people all over the place. And
That's
just
right.
because they're nice doesn't mean that the posture of their heart is correct or that their motivations are correct. So now I think about it kind of like a job position, right? If you want a position in my life, one, you have to apply. I don't just give jobs out to people who don't apply.
That's right. That's right.
If you don't apply, you don't get the position. And
Right.
guess what? You still got to interview. You got to be qualified. You have to be accepted for the position. And then after you get the position, you also have to keep the position.
Right.
So how are we growing in the company and things like that, because a company can be set up as a 1-person company or a 2-person company. So
right.
it can change depending on the season, like we were talking about before.
Well, also it can be a limited partnership. Right? Like, I love you so much, Shannon. Like, yeah, you got to apply.
Yeah.
Most qualified candidate too, because I'm not playing here.
Yes, but I like what we're talking about, because stuff does go missed, and that's my next question, Chanda, is how does somebody that's not the actual person in the relationship but is close in proximity, how would I support my friend that is in a relationship like this? Or if I have a friend who has a friend in another state who's going through something, what are the correct and appropriate actions to not overstep that person, to be supportive?
Well, what I have learned is, when you're dealing with someone that is very close to you or just anyone in general, I have learned that when they come to you in that space, they're already vulnerable and they're already feeling some type of way about themselves. They're in a place where they have low self-esteem, they're questioning their self-worth. So when they come to you, I have learned to just listen, number one, and ask for permission to give your advice. I have learned to do that because sometimes, like I said, again, they're already in a vulnerable space and you don't want to say the wrong thing to make them feel some type of way about coming to you in the first place. So again, I listen and I always ask for permission, before I give any advice. Not only that, you don't necessarily want to put limits on how you support them. And I say that because, we all know someone who may have, been in a relationship and they may say, hey, I'm leaving him. I'm done. But the next thing you know, they're back together. Well, even in that, you want to support them because, again, you don't want to make your support conditional. You don't want it to be, well, if they go back with this guy, then, hey, I'm not going to support them. That's not how you show your support. And I've also learned too that you don't necessarily want to make horrible comments. And I say that to say more so like, well, you're stupid if you stay with him. Or, I can't believe you would stay with him, afterwards. So you just really want to be careful about how you approach that delicate situation. But I have definitely learned in just doing those things, just being there, just being a listening ear and asking, like I said, for permission and just supporting them no matter what, I have noticed that helps them tremendously. And you also want to make sure that, if they do come to you, you want to let them know that it's a judgment-free zone. And if it's a safe space, they need to know that. Because again, just as somebody who's gone through, emotional abuse and physical abuse, it wasn't always easy saying, hey, I need help. Sometimes that phrase is the hardest phrase for someone to say, is that I need help. And Shannon, you mentioned something earlier about setting boundaries. And I'm so glad you brought that up because as it relates to setting boundaries, I think it's important that we get to a space where we normalize that and know that is okay to set boundaries. I mean, especially in relationships. And when you set boundaries, stand firm on those boundaries. Do not waver your boundaries, because when you set boundaries, that basically puts whoever you're dating or whoever your friends are, that just gives them parameters for you on what type of behavior is going to be accepting to you or not. And even in setting boundaries, I tell my girls, no is a complete sentence. There's no explanation behind it. No. And when you say no, again, stand firm on that, because believe it or not, when you set boundaries, that's when you learn a person's true colors, because either they're going to respect your boundaries, but someone who is, manipulative and controlling, they'll try to go against it just to see how serious you are about setting those boundaries. So I'm glad you brought that up, because again, setting boundaries sometimes can be somebody else's, worst nightmare, because now, like I said, you're putting, that firm confirmation in, like, no, these are my expectations, and you stand on that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Y'all, this is bringing up all kinds of stuff for me. Like, all kinds. I wanted to shout out for our listeners. Like, y'all, this can happen to anybody. Like, the national statistics on domestic violence, it says on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. In 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men.
That's right.
Like,
that's right.
The story that is bubbling up for me that I want to tell y'all, because it's just what came up when you started talking, was a couple of years back. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and my oldest daughter was on her way home, and she came in and told me that a neighbor and a friend had a whole bunch of police cars by their house, and something was going on.
Oh my God.
And she said, will you text her? And I texted her and said, hey, do you need me to come over? And she said, yes, please come over. And I get over there, and it was a domestic violence situation where there was alcohol involved, and they were having a big fight, and he got physically abusive. And this had not happened before. I mean, this was we're in suburbs of Duluth, you know, but he had a handgun. And he was, and I want to bring this in because of what's happening in our Georgia legislature actually today that I want to talk to our listeners about too. So he had been going out to the car, rummaging around in the trunk where the handgun lived, right? And so by this time I was there, the police were there, you know, he was telling this whole story of yarn about it was just BS, but you know, he was still agitated. And I said to the police officers, who were 2 white police officers, and my friends were a white couple too. And I said to the officers, you know, he has a gun, and that's what he was looking for. And they looked at me and they said, ma'am, it's not illegal to own a gun in Georgia. And I said, sir, that is how women die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they did not take his gun. And they did not, like, and I ended up bringing this friend home with me that night, stayed up all night, because then I'm thinking, I've just put my family in danger, like, right? Like, but I didn't know what else to do. And so I called for some resources. And, you know, because one resource was because one of the interventions was her boundary was she was not going home until the gun was gone, which was, you know, probably a life-saving decision.
Right.
But the police wouldn't take it because he hadn't committed a crime. And so I checked into the resources, and, you know, my background's social work. And I went and sat down with him and said, hey, you know, this is her boundary. And do you have somebody that you can give the gun to? Somebody that you trust to get it off this property? Well, then he looks at me and says, you. And I was like, oh, I don't want this gun. I do not. But I took it and I locked it up, and I kept it for a year. And to speak to your point of, she was not ready to leave. And what I could do for my friend and sister was to take away the weapon that could kill her and keep it safe. And I want to tell y'all, he called a couple of times during that year and would say, oh, she said that I could have the gun back. I'd be like, oh, okay, da-da-da-da-da. Never get, like,
right.
Right. But I want to bring this up, y'all, because right now, under the Gold Dome in Georgia is Senate Bill 319, where they are trying to pass and push through a bill where you have permitless carry, that you don't have to have a background check to buy a gun.
Oh my gosh.
You do not have to have a permit to carry concealed. Like, this is dangerous, especially for women. So I reached out to my senator today. I want to encourage all our listeners to reach out to your senator if you are a listener in Georgia. Texas recently passed this bill. It is not good. It is not. I mean, 75% of Republicans approve background checks. So this is not like a Republican versus Democratic issue. This is not like the majority of people in our country support background checks for things very much like this, like to prevent domestic violence when somebody's in a mental health crisis. So it's nuts that they are trying to push this bill through. So I will get off my soapbox. I will, but it just bubbled all up for me because this is all interconnected about keeping each other safe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this week we're talking, and thank you for sharing, Christine, and Chanda, thank you for sharing your story too, because I know even though we heal from continue to move forward, it's not always easy. My thing is, it might not be illegal, but that's not also what you say right now. If you're at somebody's house, like I didn't say he illegally has a gun. No. I said that you're called for a domestic violence situation, and this is his intent. I'm trying to tell you what his intent is.
Right.
So I was so mad, y'all. I was so mad. I couldn't tell you how mad I was.
Right.
So, Chanda, it reminds me, and I've actually started the practice too of asking permission to give advice. Do you want to know what I think right now? Do you want to know how I feel? Because a lot of times we don't actively listen. We listen to respond, and we listen because we think we understand, because we saw an episode or halfway have, a similar situation. But like you said, every situation is different, so actively listening to that person, making sure that we're not just inputting how we feel about it, because that's how I think that when I think about how somebody feels in the situation, if they're being abused, that's somebody else putting something on them that they're not asking for.
Right.
So that's still emotional abuse. You're not listening. You're putting something on me that I'm not asking for. You're intruding on my boundaries and my emotional space when I'm trying to have a safe space. And so now I feel like I'm in a similar situation. All the spaces that I want to feel safe in, I'm being abused and not listened to. I feel like that just perpetuates the problem.
Absolutely. And, to kind of touch on what Christine was saying, the fact that a gun was introduced, in that situation, thank God I got out of the situation when I did. And, and I knew it was time after a certain point, because how can I say this? The behavior, every situation is different. The behavior can increase suddenly, or it can increase over a period of time. So you never know what incident is going to cause that major incident. And like I said, there'll be little things, and it'll be in the little things that I saw was, he would throw things here and there when he would get mad, and, he would throw things at me, but sometimes he would throw things around me, but the whole purpose was to instill that fear, or he would break things around the house. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I'll never forget this particular night. The apartment that we were in, it had an alarm system. And you know how sometimes that chirping noise, like smoke detectors will make, like when the battery is dying? Well, that's what the alarm was doing. And for whatever reason, I kept putting in the code, and it wouldn't accept it. So eventually, when you do that, the alarm just starts going crazy, and it got very loud. So when I did that, that made him even more angry, to the point where he actually wound up just ripping the whole unit out of the wall. Like, you could literally see the wires exposed. He ripped it out and threw it across the apartment, and it wound up hitting like the hood that's over the stove. And he threw it so hard that he put a dent in it. So again, now remembering now, I'm like 21, 22 years old at the time. And so just in seeing something like that, of course, I immediately just was like, oh my God, this is not normal. Like, what's going on? So my initial response was fear. I knew it wasn't right, but at the same time too, I thought, well, this is just one incident. It's not really that bad. It's okay. He didn't mean to do it. Like, I was creating all those excuses. But I said all of that to say that over time, the things that he was doing to be abusive, it got worse. Like, they kept getting worse and more worse over time. So again, you never know what incident is going to put them in a space that leads them to, you know, grabbing a gun, because they can be unpredictable. Like you just don't know. You really don't know.
All right. You're so right. You're so right. I am sitting over here thinking about an episode that happened when I was 22 or 23. Like, I want to bring this up because I want your advice on this, like how women can be smart, because I was not smart. Like, I was a baby girl and I was 22 or 23, and I had been dating somebody for about a year. And I realized he was a pathological liar. And I also, but he had a young daughter who I was in the role of mom for. It was a very long, convoluted story. Loved her, knew I needed to get out of the relationship, but it was hard, right? And it was so meek and so timid. For those of y'all that know me now, you would be like, what? But I really was. I was really kind of shy and meek and timid. And he was only like my second or third serious boyfriend. And I will never forget this, because it was time to leave. Like, I was starting to break up. I was, and I want to give resources to our listeners to how to do this, because y'all, this was back in Texas. He was a gun collector. That should have been my first warning, but it wasn't. I was young. And so I go to break up, and I will never forget this, because he carried a handgun with him. And we were in a fight, and I was usually I didn't stand up or say anything, but he said something about killing himself. I can't even remember, y'all. This is a memory that is just bubbling up. I apologize, live and on streaming. But it was like one of those moments where I stood up for myself for the first time, and it worked out. It's okay. I'm still here, but I probably shouldn't have done it this way, because I remember him pulling out the handgun and throwing it on the couch and saying, the thought crossed my mind to shoot you and then to shoot myself.
Wow.
And I wasn't timid in that moment. I was pissed. And those of y'all that know me, I don't get mad very often. I was mad, and I went toe to toe and just I was not very kind. But basically what I said is, you're not going to leave your child this way. And I mean, but it was such a huge, big deal. And it was a holy shit moment that I was like, he could have killed me right in that moment. And I didn't see it coming. I did not see it coming. And then I left. I mean, I got out of there because, you know, I was like, ooh, gotta go, right? I got out of there. And he became a stalker for a couple of months until really he got a new girl. And I have not thought about that in years. Like, years, about how that was an abusive situation, but I didn't have the words to label it that way. I didn't have the experience or knowledge to how to get out of this, because just like you said, I was raised by two people who weren't abusive to each other. So like, I was in it before I knew I was in it.
Right.
And it was like, so how do young girls, how do women, no matter what the age, how do they get out safely? Because I look back at that, and that was just a miracle I got out of it safely. Like,
look, me and you both, and, you know, just to kind of, I'll share with, you know, how I left. But again, every situation is different. So if you are someone who is planning to leave, I always tell, you know, women or young girls, number one, you want to let somebody know what you're planning on doing. Number one, let a few people know, like, hey, this is what's going on. You really don't have to give details, but hey, I'm leaving. This is what you need to know. So always let somebody know. And based upon the situation, if the day you're going to leave or in preparation to leave, you can always call a police officer. I always say that if the police need to be present, get the police involved, point blank, period. That's what they're there for. And then even after that, even in what I have found myself doing was actually going back and kind of writing down like all the instances where I was in danger and didn't even, know it. If there's other steps that you need to take as far as like getting a restraining order, or once you leave, you want to make sure that when you leave, and I don't want to make this sound insensitive, but when you leave, you want to make sure that it's a definite decision, because I have found that some women, once they get family members involved, once the police get involved and they go back, then some people don't take them very seriously. And, they develop this thing in their mind. Well, I mean, does she really want to leave? Does she really want to do this? She went back the last time. And that's okay if that happens, because again, it's that manipulation. Again, it's just to see them if they still have access to you. So they will do things. They will say things. Oh, I've changed, or oh, I'm getting help, and I've done this. And they will lay it on real good to make it seem like they've gotten themselves together, when again, it's just their way of getting back, having access to you. So like I said, I tell, young girls, let your parents know, because sometimes to show like their independence, or to show like, oh, I've got this, they won't even say anything. So again, I just always encourage them to always have that open line of communication, and even parents, have that open door policy so that your kids know they can come to you and have these conversations with you. Because again, if they don't have you to go to, at least recommend that they have another trusted adult that they can talk to, whether if it's a counselor, another friend, a sibling, whomever, that's something that they need to know. Also, again, if it's a dangerous situation, which most of the time it is, you get a police officer there, get them involved. And for me, when I left, and this was a miracle, when I left, I kind of did it, I wouldn't say kind of sneaky, but that's what it was. He was originally from Augusta, Georgia, and every so often he would go and visit his parents. And so this particular weekend, he was saying, hey, I'm going to go see my parents. And I told him, I said, well, I'm not going. I have this to do. I have that to do. I literally had those things to do, but I emphasize, like, I just cannot go. Typically he would have fought me like tooth and nail, like, no, you're going, pack your things. Let's go, because that's just how he was. But that particular day, he didn't fight me about it at all. He didn't. And that weekend, I got 3 of my girlfriends, my dad's truck, and we literally packed up everything on the weekend. And mind you, this whole time, he's calling me, we're having conversations, and I'm still, talking to him, like I'm just going about my daily routine. And of course, when I left and he came home and he saw I wasn't there, he was pissed beyond, for lack of a better word. And he just started sending me all these text messages. I wasn't communicating with him, but it didn't stop there, because we worked together, and it was one of those things where I wound up, getting a transfer to another hospital. But I wouldn't, looking back on it, I wouldn't recommend, a young woman to do that. But in my mind, I thought that was the best thing for me to do. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell them really what was going on. It was just more so, hey, I'm moving. And it kind of worked out, because at the time, the young lady I moved in with, her roommate was leaving. So it worked out. And so that's the way I presented it to my parents. So they were never really like alarmed as to what was going on. So again, I always recommend that you definitely let somebody know your plan. Definitely make sure that if you feel like, other people need to be there, or if you don't want to get the police involved, just have somebody there. Don't feel like it's something that you have to do on your own, because you don't. You do not have to do it on your own.
Well, we're always talking about that, and about how that's why women connect in wisdom, right? I love that you called your girlfriends. I love that, you got your ride or dies. Like, we have, and if you don't, we need to create them for people, because you got to have people you can call that are going to come at 3 a.m. in the morning or 4 a.m. in the morning. And, y'all. Shannon, you've been real quiet. You okay?
Yes, yes. Just allowing space and holding space for you ladies to talk about all the different instances and the specifics of it, and that's the biggest thing. Like, we can talk about stuff vaguely, but if we don't really go into detail, this is how I did it, this is what happened, it's easy to still not know what to do. This person, like, okay, great conversation, still don't know what to do. So I had never thought about calling the police. I had never thought about make sure that you tell somebody what is going on. And as a young girl, I was with one of my stepmoms as we went and helped somebody move out, and she was gone. You know what I mean? When he came back, I don't know the details of the situation, but definitely have had different things like that happen. And everything that you're saying makes sense.
I think that's the thing. Every one of us knows somebody, whether we know it or not.
Right.
Or whether we recognize it was ourselves or whether we know it was somebody else. Like, this is an epidemic. Yeah. And, we've talked about like the statistics and our own stories. When you think about healthy relationships, because I know this is what you do now, right? This is what you do. You help people identify like healthy relationships and things. So what do you like? How do you do that? Like, how do you give women the self-esteem or the tools or where they feel like, I got this, and I can spot this person on Bumble or Tinder or wherever, because I've got one of those radars now. I didn't have it when I was 22, but I got it now, right?
Absolutely. So again, as it relates to the process that I had to go through, because after all of this happened, it was a really traumatic experience for me. So I had to go through counseling. I really did, because again, it goes back to the comment of, if you don't know that you're in a healthy relationship and you think that this is normal, then you're going to carry those behaviors over, whether if it's intentional or not, into your next relationships. And, unfortunately, there's so many platforms out here that young women and women have access to, that they look at those relationships and think like this is how it's supposed to be, when it's absolutely not true. You're only seeing what's on TV. You're not really seeing behind the scenes. And just imagine what's going on behind the scenes, because you see the things that they show us, on TV. They normalize, being talked to any kind of way. They normalize the drama. They normalize the chaos. And it's crazy because these young women have no idea that these shows are specifically like targeted and marketed towards them. And because they know, that these are things that young women are watching. And so, like I said, I hate that these platforms are out there, but that's why I'm so passionate about it. Because again, our girls need to understand and need to know that they are worthy, that they are worthy of having these, healthy relationships. And when you're in healthy relationships, you're going to have people, or whoever, your partner is going to encourage you. Your partner is also going to be confident within themselves. Your partner is always going to put you in a space to push you forward to be the best person that you can be. They're going to encourage other relationships, other healthy relationships. Your partner is going to respect, your boundaries that you have set in your relationships, So understand that, again, when young women don't know how to approach healthy relationships, this is where I advise parents, to have these conversations. And, I always ask parents, what are some things that you value in relationships that you can share with your child? What are some things that you would tell your younger self, as it relates to, dating and just being in relationships? So parents are always a good place to start, just in asking those questions as far as, how do you see yourself? How do you value yourself? And an exercise that I do have some of the young girls do is to write down some of the things that they love about themselves and why they love those things about themselves. And believe it or not, when you get those, I guess, I don't know what to call them, but when those endorphins or whatever get to going in your mind, believe it or not, it totally changes just the expressions on their face. Like it gets them out of this space of not feeling, worthy. So just starting with something simple as that, writing out the things that they love about themselves, or just writing out the things that they feel make a healthy relationship. And again, that's something that they can do with their parents. And then sometimes too, that's why I say it's a fine line. You have to be able to know the difference when somebody is just being like overly charming or overly, if they're just overly being, I guess giving you certain compliments. There's just that fine, it's just that fine line in knowing. But when it comes to being in a healthy relationship, you're gonna know it. It's going to feel different. You're going to be confident. You're going to feel good about yourself. You'll have a higher, I guess, self-esteem. And again, they're going to encourage you to be better. And, to me, that's what healthy relationships are all about. It's about having that great communication. It's about having that, just being okay to agree and to disagree, just to having that healthy understanding and that balance, because they all go together and it makes a difference. And again, I always tell my young girls, if you could have the perfect gentleman, what would it look like? And it's so funny to see, their responses. But, I think that's definitely a good place to start in recognizing, just healthy relationships. Because when you're in a healthy relationship, you feel good. You feel good about yourself.
What I hear you saying between the lines too is teaching all of us to listen to our intuition.
That's right.
When you say it's nuanced, to me, that's our gut, right? Like
right.
We meet people and there's just something you can't put your finger, that's your intuition saying, oh, run. Like,
right.
When I was younger, I'd be like, oh, just wait and see. Now I'm like, run. Like, don't even like say, see ya. We ain't got time for this. Like, what does Ariana Grande say? Thank you next. Like, thank you next. Don't have time. But y'all, I have so loved this conversation. I'm paying attention to time. So Shannon, you look like you were about to say something.
No, I was just laughing at what you were saying. Like, don't wait and see, run.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Right. And even just what I've learned too is even when being in a healthy relationship, it just builds that trust between each other. Not only that, it just puts you in a space to have a better respect for yourself. And one thing that's really important to me is somebody who can be accountable. Be accountable for when you've said things and when you've done things, just to be able to say, you know what, I was wrong and I'm sorry. And you'd be surprised how hard that is for some people to even admit when they're wrong, And again, I think like I said, that's a big thing for me is that accountability and that trust and that honesty. And I'm not saying perfection. I never said perfection. Mm-hmm. But again, like once you've had a taste of a relationship that's just incredible, you're not going to want anything else, And once you realize that's what you deserve, you're not going to want or settle for anything else for the sake of just having somebody. You know what I mean? You're not going to want to.
I love it. Well, we are going to put your contact information in our show notes so listeners can follow you on Instagram. I love following your Instagram because you do some great advice. You do short snippets too. Like you recently posted the one recently that I was like, "Ooh, yes, ma'am." You said, "I can take a joke. I can't take disrespect disguised as a joke. There is a difference."
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So those little pearls of wisdom you just dropped. I'm like, y'all, everybody go follow her. Good.
That's true. I do like that. That's true. Whether it's friends or a relationship or not, I think there's that blurry line sometimes, and let's not be blurry. Let's be clear.
Yes.
And still be respectful.
Oh my goodness. I hate to wrap this up. This has been so good. But y'all, let's talk about our wisdom in action. So
Cool.
every week we do a hashtag about our wisdom in action. If we had to take this conversation today, if we had to take this conversation and hashtag it, what would our wisdom in action be?
So I will say, I think, and I was thinking about it as we were wrapping up. I think mine is going to be hashtag reaching out. You know, you talked about your friend that reached out, and I actually have known somebody that was murdered by their partner, which is crazy.
Wow.
So I'm actually going to specifically reach out to Jimmy Carter Papado. I'm going to reach out to you guys and check on everybody and just.
I love that. Hey, we got to give a shout out to JoJo before we go. The voice, the fourth voice y'all have heard on our podcast today has been a very special guest.
Yes, say hi.
Hello. We know and adore, who is being raised to be healthy in relationships and to respect and love folks. And so glad he could join us today. Yeah, Shannon, I think my wisdom in action is going to be, you know, we were talking before the show. I had a dear friend that I haven't talked to in about 3 years, just pandemic and life and things like this. And out of the blue today, I get this text that says, "Hey, Christine, checking in on my strong friends and family. It's been unsettling seeing all the people leaving this earth by choice lately. You never know what people are really going through. So if no one told you today that they love you, I do. We need each other to survive. If there is anything I can do, please let me know. Love you, my friend Moon." And, I took it, made it my own, and started sending it to people because, so that's my hashtag wisdom in action. I want to keep connecting. So what about you, Chanda?
Just like I said, to kind of piggyback off you guys, I would say I have a couple, so we're gonna stick with the one. I would say just more so self-love and loving yourself enough, because when you love yourself, you love others. And then with it being, like she said, the month of February, just loving yourself, it makes it easier for you to love others in relationships and friendships too.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I should say, thank you.
So grateful to know you and so appreciative of the work that you do in this world. It is so needed. And thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you ladies are awesome. You are so great. And I follow all of y'all, just to keep up with what's going on. So it's always good to just reconnect and talk to you guys.
Mm-hmm. We feel the same way. Don't be a stranger. Keep us posted on your awesome work, and we will talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Whew. That was a big conversation.
It's good though. I like it. When she was talking about listen first, that's the first thing. And then ask permission to give advice. That's really good. Making sure you tell people if you're going to leave and calling for reinforcements if you need it. Absolutely.
And being supportive and not putting deadlines on other people's relationships of when they get out or not, being available as a friend and a resource. I also went ahead and put the National Domestic Violence Hotline in our show notes for people because this is a big old conversation, y'all. This is big. So I know it is about time for us to jump off. And we said we were going to stop and do it in the middle, but please tell me real quick what's going on over at Shalo Glow so our listeners know.
My goodness, so much. So if you have severely dry skin, uneven skin, scars, burns, cuts, bites, all of those things, Shalo Glow is for you. We have both a travel glow kit and a home glow kit. The travel glow kit passes easily through TSA, and we're actually sold out right now. So they've been grabbing it up. We also have the home glow kit. Those are going to have the bigger sizes for you if you know you need more and more to share. But I'm so excited. Tomorrow is the SCAD midterm for my students that I've been working with. And Christine, I love working with the students. And so it's been such a joy to work with all of the students in the different classes and to see the amazing stuff that they're creating. Like,
I cannot believe we didn't talk about that at the top of the show. This is going to be a gem for the folks who listen to all the way to the end. But if
yes,
you are not following Shannon on her Instagram, you need to go check it out, because your photo shoot with those SCAD students and your products was just stunning, my friend. Like, that was so rock star awesome.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm so excited. So we're halfway through the process, and I mean the initial process. Let's say that
Right.
because I feel like it's going to go much further. It's the second year of the business, so this is just the beginning, and I can't look. I can't wait to see how everything turns out.
I love it. Well, I have a big event coming up with Sheila, my co-author. We are, and our friend Marla Durden, we are doing another Secrets of Interplay for helping professionals. So I'm going to put that in the show notes if folks want to reach out and figure out how to get involved. If you're a helping professional, if you are a caretaker, I think artists and activists, I think we do so much of this work. Almost every woman I know is a caretaker, but we are doing this interplay for self and community care. And I also see user available. So we'll put all that in the show notes, because I know we're out of time. I am so grateful for you, my friend, and these conversations. Whoo, this one blew me away today. Like, that's the wrong terminology. Scratch that out of my vocabulary.
Think about it.
Woo, this one took me off guard today. So thank you, my friend. I adore you, and I look forward to our conversation next week. Oh, let me pull up our banner. Look, I am so discombobulated. I don't even know how we're doing the show. How do we end this show, my friend?
Together, okay? We are women connected in wisdom. And okay, ladies, thank you so much for tuning into our 53rd episode. We will be back next week, Wednesday, live at 5. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll see you next week.
See you soon.